You know that feeling when you're at a casino and you see someone at the roulette table who has just kept letting it ride on black?
Oh, yeah.
Like they've won 5 times in a row. There's a literal mountain of chips in front of them, and everyone in the room is just holding their breath,
Right, right.
just waiting to see if they're going to walk away a billionaire or, lose the house.
It is a very specific, very uncomfortable kind of tension. I mean, you can almost feel the static electricity in the room because the stakes have escalated so far beyond normal logic.
Yeah, exactly. Well, welcome to this deep dive, because right now, in the back half of 2026, that casino is basically the global economy.
Mm-hmm.
The player is the tech industry, and that massive mountain of chips.
Yeah.
That is the artificial intelligence boom.
Yeah, it's a big mountain.
It is. And I'm looking at our stack of sources for today, and it's just a heavy hitter list. I mean, we've got recent 2026 economic reports from the IMF, the OECD, McKinsey.
And those academic papers, too.
Right, yeah. The dense academic papers fresh off our RCA.
Yeah.
Which, if you aren't familiar, listening at home, that's the open access server where the absolute most cutting-edge, raw computer science research lands before it even hits peer review.
It's where the real raw data is.
Exactly. And on top of that, we're looking at some increasingly loud, frankly, alarming public statements from top financial and tech leaders. Because the question on everyone's mind, the reason CEOs are quietly sweating in their boardrooms right now, is whether this massive AI boom is actually a bubble.
Yeah.
Are we staring down the barrel of a dot-com crash 2.0?
I mean, that is the single most critical economic question of the year.
Right.
Because if this is a bubble, the sheer scale of the capital involved means the pop won't just, hit Silicon Valley venture capitalists.
Well, it's going to hit everyone.
Exactly. The ripple effects will tear through everyday retirement funds, strain global energy grids, and fundamentally restructure the job market that you navigate every single day.
Yeah, so our mission today isn't to, put on tinfoil hats and spread apocalyptic doom.
Right. No doom-mongering.
We're here to cut through the hype. We are going to look at the hard data together and figure out if your portfolio, and honestly, your career, are positioned to survive a potential market correction. We really need to separate the real underlying economic fundamentals from the empty hot air hype. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
To figure out if we're in a bubble, we have to start by looking at the price tag.
Mm-hmm.
We need to examine the raw financial data from the last couple of years that's triggering all these alarms in the first place.
Yeah, and when you look at that data, the numbers sort of stretch the limits of human comprehension.
They really do.
Let's start with the hardware foundation, right? NVIDIA, the company manufacturing the specialized graphics processing units, or GPUs, that physically train all these AI models, well, they saw their valuation peak recently at over $4.5 trillion.
Wow.
Trillion. With a T.
I mean, that is larger than the gross domestic product of most countries on Earth.
Yeah.
Just for one single company making the digital shovels for this gold rush.
Right.
But they aren't the only ones spending astronomical sums, are they?
Oh, far from it. I mean, the primary buyers of those shovels are the hyperscalers. So the massive cloud computing providers like Amazon, Google, Meta, and Microsoft.
Right.
In 2025 alone, those four entities spent nearly $300 billion in capital expenditures.
$300 billion.
Yeah, and the vast majority of that capital was poured directly into AI infrastructure. We aren't just talking about buying computer chips anymore.
What are they buying?
We're talking about acquiring vast tracts of land, securing, municipal water rights for cooling systems, and building immense data centers completely from the ground up.
$300 billion in 1 year. I was actually reading the notes from Jason Furman, the economist out of Harvard, and he pointed out something wild about that specific figure.
Yeah.
He noted that in 2025, AI investment didn't just contribute to the U.S. economy. It essentially drove a massive portion of all U.S. GDP growth.
Right. It became basically the load-bearing pillar of macroeconomic expansion. And that intense concentration is exactly why economists are losing sleep right now. Because that $300 billion from the hyperscalers, that represents roughly 1.3 to 1.6% of the entire United States GDP.
That's just insane.
Tied up in just one sector's capital expenditure. And furthermore, a significant portion of this expansion is being fueled by an explosion of corporate debt.
Oh, right, the leverage.
Yeah, companies are borrowing heavily against future earnings to build these data centers today, banking on the assumption that demand will just, never cool off.
Which brings out the heavyweights sounding the alarm. I mean,
Yeah.
you have Ray Dalio, the billionaire hedge fund manager, coming right out and directly comparing this exact moment to the dot-com era of 2000.
Yeah, he didn't mince words.
No, he didn't. And you have the Bank of England voicing concerns about a severe systemic market correction. Even Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, the guy arguably driving the hype train, has warned about the market getting dangerously ahead of itself.
Yeah, when he says it, you listen.
Right. And the IMF recently put out a stark warning that if tech and AI stocks are overvalued and the market corrects, it could wipe out tens of billions of dollars in everyday household wealth.
Yeah. What's fascinating here is how Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, frames this moment.
Oh, the car analogy.
Exactly. Dimon admits very clearly, he says AI is real. He isn't calling the underlying mathematical capability a scam, right? But he warns that massive fortunes are still going to be lost. He compares it to the early days of automobiles and televisions. Like the underlying technology of the car absolutely changed human civilization.
Obviously.
But if you look back at the early 1900s, there were hundreds of individual car companies, and the vast majority of them went completely bankrupt.
Wow.
The technology won, but most of the early investors were completely wiped out.
I look at this 2025 corporate spending spree, and it reminds me of someone like maxing out all their credit cards to buy the absolute most expensive professional-grade Everest-ready hiking gear.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like the titanium boots, the thermal tents, the supplemental oxygen tanks.
Okay.
But they've never actually been camping.
Right.
And they don't even know if they can handle the altitude. It just makes me wonder, are these hyperscalers just buying all this gear out of sheer FOMO fear of missing out because their competitors are doing it? Or is there a real mountain they're actually climbing right now?
Well, the problem with buying Everest gear is that eventually your investors demand to see pictures from the summit.
Yeah.
The sheer cost of this infrastructure necessitates a massive proportional return on investment, which brings us to the core of the current anxiety.
The ROI.
Exactly.
And this is where the dot-com deja vu gets incredibly strong. We're moving from the astronomical cost of building the technology to the actual revenue it's supposed to be generating.
Right, the actual money coming back in.
Yeah. Corsten Slick, the chief economist at Apollo, recently highlighted that the price-to-earnings ratios, the PE ratios, for some of these top AI stocks are currently higher than they were at the peak of the tech bubble in 1999.
Higher than 1999. That is just...
It's terrifying. With PE ratios blowing past those historical red lines, the market is essentially pricing in 20 years of flawless compounding growth for these hardware companies today. Like, are investors just collectively delusional right now?
I mean, it is a very dangerous kind of optimism. To be fair to the optimists, companies like NVIDIA are seeing real, tangible revenue growth.
Sure.
Over 60% year over year recently, which is driven by those hyperscaler purchases. But their current stock prices are so elevated that they've already capitalized on decades of assumed future earnings.
Right.
Investors are pricing these companies as if perfection, absolute market dominance, and unlimited energy supply are basically guaranteed until the year 2045.
And perfection is definitely not guaranteed, especially when you look at how non-tech companies are actually struggling to use these tools.
Yes.
The McKinsey report in our stack highlights a massive paradox. They found that at an individual level, productivity is visibly rising.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, an employee could use an AI tool to summarize a 50-page PDF in 10 seconds or write a block of code in an hour that used to take a day.
It's magical.
It is. But when you zoom out to the enterprise scale, when you look at a massive corporation's actual bottom-line measurable ROI is incredibly slow and stubbornly difficult to capture. So why is there such a huge disconnect between individual speed and company profit?
Well, the friction lies in organizational integration.
Okay.
It's one thing for a single employee to draft an email faster. It is an entirely different challenge to integrate an AI agent into a massive legacy supply chain system.
That makes sense.
Corporations are dealing with decades of messy, unstructured, completely proprietary data. They're navigating complex cybersecurity protocols and compliance regulations. So companies are running thousands of pilot programs. I mean, everyone has an AI task force right now.
Oh, yeah, every country.
But translating those pilots into a structural redesign that actually generates billions in new profit, that requires years of painful, expensive workflow overhaul.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because of this immense pressure from Wall Street to show immediate AI adoption, We're seeing signs of circular investments.
Circular investments are wild.
It's like a massive party where everyone is buying rounds of expensive drinks for each other, but they're all just swiping each other's credit cards.
Yeah, it's exactly.
A big tech giant invests $1 billion into a hot new AI startup, but the hidden condition in the term sheet is that the startup must use that exact same $1 billion to buy cloud computing power back from that same tech giant.
Yeah, and that mechanism artificially inflates the revenue of the big tech company.
Right.
On their quarterly earnings call, it looks like they have massive organic demand for their cloud services. In reality, they're essentially feeding their own customers to create the illusion of a thriving ecosystem.
So if you're looking at your own stock portfolio, how do you even spot which companies have real customers versus those just passing the same dollar back and forth? I mean, the bartender's pouring drinks, the register's ringing, and it feels like a great party. But if investments are this circular, aren't we just inflating a giant balloon with our own hot air?
Well, the moment the bartender asks to close the tab is the nightmare scenario for market bears.
Yep.
Eventually, the music stops. Investors will demand actual external enterprise revenue from non-tech sectors.
Like who?
Like manufacturing, retail, agriculture. They need to be the ones paying for these AI services rather than just circular tech-to-tech spending. If that external revenue isn't there, the valuation models just collapse.
Right. But, the counter-argument to that doom and gloom scenario is that we can't just yell scam at every circular investment and ignore the underlying science.
True.
Our sources aren't just Wall Street skeptics. We have rigorous academic evidence showing why this isn't just a hollowpets.com trend. We really have to look at the actual utility being created here.
Yeah, and the contrast with 1999 is pretty stark when you examine the fundamentals. Today's AI leaders are incredibly robust financial machines. They are sitting on mountains of cash, not highly leveraged startups with zero revenue.
Right, they aren't selling dog's food online.
Exactly. And if you dive into the recent Heimberg review papers on ArcSef, researchers are tracking the physical hardware utilization rates within these new data centers.
What are they finding?
They're proving that these chips aren't just sitting idle waiting for a web click. They are running maximum capacity compute cycles around the clock, solving incredibly complex mathematical problems for real-world applications.
And we're seeing that utility validated by macroeconomists, too.
Yeah.
The OECD put out a study projecting that AI could add between 0.25 and 0.6 percentage points annually to the U.S. Christmas. Total factor productivity over the next 10 years.
That's a huge deal.
It is. For anyone not reading economic textbooks on the weekend, total factor productivity, or TFP, is essentially the magic multiplier of an economy. It's the measure of how a country can produce more economic output without having to increase inputs like labor or raw materials. So if you have the same number of workers and the same amount of steel, but your TFP goes up, you suddenly produce 20 cars instead of 10.
And AI achieves that by fundamentally altering the speed of discovery.
Yes.
McKinsey backs this up by forecasting structural impacts in highly complex sectors. Take drug discovery in healthcare, for example.
Yeah, well, that's a great example.
Right. Historically, understanding how a single protein folds could take a PhD student 5 years of trial and error. Today, AI models can simulate and predict millions of protein structures in a matter of days. That radically collapses the timeline and cost of pharmaceutical development.
Wow.
And in finance, it's overhauling risk modeling by allowing institutions to process thousands of alternative data points in real time to price a loan dynamically rather than relying on, a static credit score.
Okay, but if we're seeing these massive leaps in specific fields, why does the broader market still feel so shaky?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, economists classify AI as a general-purpose technology, or a GPT,
Right.
and not to be confused with a generative, pre-trained transformer like ChatGPT. A general-purpose technology is a foundational innovation, like the steam engine, electricity, or the internet itself.
So innovations that don't just improve one industry, but fundamentally rewrite the operating system of human society.
Precisely. But the historical lesson of general-purpose technologies is a lesson in patience. The raw infrastructure takes years, sometimes decades, to build out before the massive productivity gains are actually realized in the broader macroeconomic data.
That actually makes me think of the early factories adapting to electricity in the early 20th century.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I was reading about how when factories first got access to the electrical grid, their output didn't improve at all.
Really?
Yeah, because their entire assembly line was physically built around one giant central steam engine. Like every machine in the building was connected to this one engine by a massive, dangerous tangle of physical belts and pulleys. So when they got electricity, factory owners just ripped out the steam engine and dropped one giant electric motor into the exact same spot.
Oh, I see. They applied a revolutionary decentralized technology to an outdated centralized workflow.
Exactly. It took them nearly 30 years to realize that with electricity, you don't need one giant motor. You can put a small, dedicated electric motor on every single machine.
Right.
You can redesign the entire architecture of the factory floor based on the logical flow of the product rather than the physical proximity to a steam engine.
That makes total sense.
It took a full generation of old managers retiring and new ones coming in to actually redesign the work and unlock the productivity boom.
So are we just in that awkward transition phase right now?
Yeah.
Where we have the electricity, the massive AI models, but we haven't figured out how to build the electric motor for our specific corporate workflows yet.
That is the exact friction creating the McKinsey paradox we talked about.
The mathematical capability of the technology works, but our organizational structures, our compliance departments, and our data pipelines haven't adapted to it yet. We are trying to plug generative AI into legacy steam engine workflows.
Yeah. But building that new digital factory floor takes time, and more importantly, it takes physical resources.
It sure does.
Which brings us out of Wall Street's financial spreadsheets and into the physical geopolitical reality of 2026. Because if AI is like electricity, it needs a massive power grid to run it.
Yes. This raises an important question and perhaps the most critical constraint we face right now. What if the bubble doesn't pop because investors run out of money, but because humanity literally runs out of electricity?
Wow.
The data centers required to train and run these advanced models are consuming astronomical amounts of energy. A single query to a complex AI model requires magnitudes more electricity than a standard Google search.
That's wild.
We're talking about individual facilities that require as much sustained power as a mid-sized city, and it's pushing aging regional power grids to the absolute brink of failure.
It's creating a severe sustainability crisis.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing major tech companies forced to co-locate their new data centers directly next to nuclear power plants.
Yep.
Just to guarantee they have enough baseload juice to keep the servers from shutting down. And there's a massive geopolitical bottleneck forming around this physical infrastructure too, isn't there?
There is. The reports highlight a fascinating and somewhat precarious global dynamic. If you look at regions like Latin America or parts of Southeast Asia, the data shows an abundance of brilliant, top-tier AI developers and software engineering talent in the global south.
Okay.
However, there's a massive dependency on foreign infrastructure to actually deploy their innovations.
Right.
The actual physical means of production, the billion-dollar data centers and the advanced cooling systems, are highly centralized in the United States and Northern Europe, largely due to capital concentration and grid stability.
So you have a situation where the intellectual talent is distributed globally, but the physical hardware is hoarded regionally. That creates an incredible supply chain vulnerability. And speaking of hardware, the chips inside those data centers are a massive financial liability on their own. According to those ArtSIF papers, the physical architecture of these GPUs depreciates at a terrifying speed.
It really does. The pace of innovation in hardware architecture is the hidden friction in this entire boom.
How so?
Well, the physics of heat limitation and the shift in demand from training massive models to running highly efficient localized inferences means that a billion-dollar data center built in 2024 is using chips that are functionally obsolete, power-inefficient bricks by 2026.
That's only 2 years, which forces these hyperscalers into a constant, brutal cycle of expensive hardware upgrades.
Yes.
If you're funding those upgrades with corporate debt, what happens when interest rates shift? You have companies taking on new debt to buy version 4.0 chips when they haven't even finished paying off the loans for the version 2.0 chips.
And that physical and financial friction is the catalyst that could trigger a sudden market correction. And if that correction happens, we have to look at the human limiter. Right now, there is an ongoing tension in the corporate workplace between augmenting workers, giving them AI tools to make them faster, more creative, and more capable, versus fully automating their jobs to ruthlessly cut payroll costs.
Yeah, and if the market corrects, investor pressure is going to mount heavily on CEOs. The mandate will shift from experiment with AI to use AI to slash operational costs immediately, which could wildly accelerate the push for pure automation.
The alternative is equally disruptive. If the enterprise ROI never materializes, we could enter what computer scientists call an AI winter.
I've heard that term.
Yeah, it's a prolonged period where venture capital funding dries up, societal expectations plummet, and research stalls. The profound danger of an AI winter today is the inequality risk.
Because the little guys get hurt the most.
Exactly. The massive benefits and efficiencies of the technology will likely remain highly concentrated in the hands of the few mega corporations that actually survived the crash, leaving a massive economic gap between the corporate winners who control the AI infrastructure and the everyday workers left holding the bag.
So, what does this all mean? We've looked at the multi-trillion-dollar valuations, the circular credit card party, propping up cloud revenues, the very real potential for a macro productivity boom driven by drug discovery and data analysis, and the physical limits of our global power grids.
There's a lot to take in.
It is. If you're listening to this right now, trying to make sense of your 401k or your own career trajectory in 2026, here is the synthesis from the IMF, the OECD, and McKinsey.
Yeah.
The AI boom is not an empty bubble. It is not pets.com. It has deep, scientifically proven technological roots. It will likely leave us with transformative tools that rewrite how society operates, just as the dot-com crash eventually left us with the foundational infrastructure of the modern internet. But an overenthusiastic, highly volatile market correction in the near term seemed highly likely.
Yeah, that's the reality. And the actionable advice for you as a listener navigating this landscape is to ruthlessly focus on the fundamentals.
What should they be looking for?
If you're analyzing companies for your portfolio, ignore the press releases and look for real defensible moats. Like, does the company possess proprietary data that no one else can scrape?
Right.
Do they have exclusive long-term access to computing power and cheap electricity? And most importantly, do they have positive cash flow from external customers today, or just a promise of profitability in 2035?
That's great advice. And for your own career trajectory, the clear mandate from the economic data is continuous, aggressive upskilling.
Absolutely.
You must position yourself as the worker who is augmented by AI, the manager who knows how to install the small electric motor on the new digital factory floor, rather than the worker whose repetitive steam engine tasks are ripe for automation.
It requires deep adaptability. I mean, the underlying mathematics and technology are profoundly real, but the corporate business models and physical supply chains are still desperately trying to catch up.
Which leaves me with one final thought, something I really want you to mull over as you navigate the rest of your week. We spent a lot of time discussing how fast these physical chips become obsolete due to shifting architectures, and how these massive city-sized data centers are being constructed on a mountain of corporate debt.
Right.
If the market does face a severe correction, and we are plunged into a prolonged AI winter, what happens to the physical world?
Oh, that's a good question.
What happens to the hundreds of billions of dollars worth of massive energy-hungry data centers currently being built out in remote deserts or next to cooling rivers? Will the physical landscape of the 2030s be littered with abandoned, hollowed-out server farms, sitting empty with dead fiber optic cables like the ghost town shopping malls of the early 2000s?
Wow.
Or will we be forced to find some bizarre, totally unforeseen new way to repurpose all that raw, obsolete computing power for a different kind of society?
It is a genuinely haunting image, the rusting physical ruins of a digital gold rush.
It really is. Well, keep your eyes open, keep aggressively questioning the hype, and remember that even if you have the most expensive Everest hiking gear in the world, you still have to put in the grueling work to climb the mountain one step at a time. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious out there,